Hey, it's Rick from Helen Valley. We host a networking event called Cameras and Coffee that we do a few times throughout the year. Our friend Michael from House Wolf Photography recently gave a lecture on working with marketing agencies that we filmed for this video. All of these lectures will be on our YouTube channel for you to watch. If you like them, be sure to give them a like, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you're subscribed.
Welcome to Cameras and Coffee. As Adam mentioned, this is me, and that is the House Wolf of House Wolf Photography. So, in the work world, most people just call me MP. It's one of those things that stuck around from getting a million emails every day. People were just sick of writing Michael, so they were like, MP it is, and I said, okie dokie. But, as Adam mentioned, I'm a proud agency FLAC. I've been there for just under 11 years at the same agency. I work at 19 Ideas, which is a woman-owned business in Buffalo. We're a full-service agency, so we do everything from design and development to public relations, copywriting, website, software development, all that good stuff. But I've worked there since I was in college. I've been there for pretty much ever. That is my dog, Gabriel. Like I said, he is the reason of House Wolf Photography, which was originally House Wolf Gaming, but the brand expanded and now we're photography as well. But when I'm not behind the lens or deep in office life, I'm probably playing Magic the Gathering. I play so much throughout the week. I stream on Twitch 2 nights a week, or fueling up with a can of Monster or a dirty, filthy martini. So that's a little bit about me. To all of my martini fans, vodka, not gin, I can't do that anymore. Bad run-ins back in the day, yes. But to get things started, I kind of want to learn a little bit about you guys and see just maybe how much you know or don't know about agencies. So we'll put our hands up, hold up your hands. And we'll start with, put a finger down if you consider yourself a creative. I hope everybody puts their fingers down for that one because we're all creative. Put another finger down if you are a photographer or a videographer. Okay, some hands are going down. Okay, we got fingers up. Put a finger down if you actively pursue freelance photography or videography work. Yeah, okay, I see some people running out of fingers here. That's good, that's a good thing. Put a finger down if you've ever seen the show Mad Men or heard of the show Mad Men. Put a finger down if you've ever worked with a marketing branding agency before. Todd's out. You're out, okay. So, it seems like everybody's got a pretty good understanding of things, but just a little bit more about me, because now that I've kind of got a baseline of where we are. So, in my role as an agency FLAC, I've done a number of jobs, really to meet the demands of where the agency was at, but also just out of pure skill sets and change. So I've done everything from copywriting and working as a PR specialist, which is mostly what I do in my day-to-day. A lot of my days are spent writing articles for the news agencies, pitching clients, working on photography stuff, which is something that we've brought to the agency now. But I've done everything from be a digital marketer, a marketing manager, a media buyer, social media manager, content creator, all that stuff, and pitch hitting designer, which if I am designing things, dear Jesus, we are in bad shape because that is very much not my background. I've worked with a ton of different brands over the years. Some of my favorites that I put up on screen are Labatt Blue, Lyft, Well Now Urgent Care from when the days they were only one agency, all the way to the big mega brand that they are now. I was their interim vice president of marketing for a number of years. And Community Beer Works, which is a little hard to see, but they were one of my little favorite passion projects, slinging beer and things like that. But enough about me. Let's talk about working with marketing, advertising, branding, communications, and creative agencies, because sometimes they all kind of have the same name and they can all mean different things. Some of them overlap, some of them are very linear in what they do, others are very broad in what they do. So, all about agency life. Marketing agencies are effectively just a company that helps businesses promote their products, services, or brands through strategic planning, creative campaigns, and targeted media placements. Really, that's kind of how they all boil down. When you see things like branding agencies, they'll typically only work on the design side of things. Communications agencies will largely be PR firms or individuals that work on external or internal communications. But largely, we're all kind of doing the same thing. It's a collective of different types of creatives and specialty personnel that come together to do a specific task. And by leveraging this collective expertise in areas such as, like I mentioned, all these different disciplines, agencies work to increase client visibility and drive audience engagement. That's pretty much why we're all here to do what we do, is just get people to look at the thing, buy the product, do the thing. And for all my nerds out there, it's basically a giant D&D party with each discipline acting as an in-game class. Has anybody played D&D before? Okay, yeah, so you got it. I was having like arguments with my agency friends. I'm like, who are the healers, who's the tanks of all of us? And they were like, I think the account executives are kind of like the dungeon master because they're like plotting this all. Like I've thought about it for years and I was just like, so then who are the tanks? And they were like, it's the developers. They're tanking through it all. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But a lot of questions that I get when I'm pitching new clients or working with brands is, their first immediate question is, why would I hire an agency? I can hire an internal employee. Why the heck do I need a group of you all to do the thing? And it usually boils down to one of a few of these things. Number one is bandwidth. A lot of times when people contact me or other partner agencies, it's a bandwidth issue. You know, right now in the world, people are tasked with so many things, and it seems like the responsibilities are going up and the salaries are staying the same. So by hiring an agency, they get access to a number of different talents all within one roof. Budget is another big thing. Costs of employees are super expensive. When it comes to onboarding, that's dead time where, you know, an employee isn't actively doing anything. Healthcare, benefits, all of those things cost money for employers to do. By hiring an agency, they don't really have to work with any of that. They just get a ready to go team. Really the only onboarding they need is project briefing and getting people in the door and onboarded onto the project. Once they're in it, they're ready to go. Expertise. A lot of times, you know, staffs with internal team members are very limited in the core functions that they can do. You know, sometimes they might have a creative director, but they don't have a developer. They might have a copywriter, but they don't have a PR person. So when they have a news announcement that needs to go out, they're kind of just like, we don't know what to do. We have a writer in-house, but they're not really that type of writer. So when you hire an agency, you kind of fill some of those gaps that people are looking for. And lastly, multidisciplinary. So we have a lot of people under one roof. Like look at Hill and Valley. There's photography, videography, branding, web services, all of that stuff all under one house. When you work with an agency, you kind of get an out-of-the-box marketing team all within one roof. And a lot of times that's very cost effective because if you think about how much it would cost to hire each one of those people individually, especially with competitive salaries, it's a lot more affordable. But what's in it for you guys? So we know now why like businesses want to do it, but like why should you want to partner with an agency, especially with, you know, all the different opportunities out there? Bigger budgets. And if you can't see it, it says usually in the bottom right corner. Usually. Typically when you work with an agency, it's a lot easier to get access to higher profile clients to build out your portfolio because they have the existing connections. They've already worked on projects with clients that know them, know the agency, and you can kind of tap into that. So that not only is helpful for your portfolio because you're able to like latch on to bigger brands that you might not be able to get as a solopreneur, but also, I mean, they're gonna be paying a lot more. Like when we worked with Wellna for 10 plus years, the budgets were through the roof. And as a bunch of collective creatives, we would have never been able to tap into that had we not had the power of an agency. Ongoing projects. A lot of times agencies are going a mile a minute. Agency life has a reputation of being very fast-paced and very crazy, and that is very true. But with that is a little bit of a benefit for you guys because, you know, once we have a good working relationship with a freelance photographer or videographer, we don't want to break that relationship. We don't want to have to onboard a new person to our team to get them onboarded into our systems. We want to keep working with the same group of people and work and grow that relationship. So it's really nice to kind of, for you guys, be able to have repeated work as opposed to hunting for projects and working on business development for yourselves and your brand. When you have a relationship with an agency, they're just going to keep tapping into you over and over again. There's also greater flexibility. As an agency flack, and I'm looking at you, Mina, because you know specifically, it's tough. The work days are long, it's ongoing, the projects can be grueling sometimes, especially when you're actually at the agency. But as a contractor with that, you can kind of work on your own dime. As long as you hit your deadlines, you can work at 9 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the morning. You don't have to kind of do some of the crazy stuff, so you sidestep that. And you also don't usually have to interact with clients, which as much as I love working agency side, sometimes clients are the trickiest part of the job. They have strong personality. I heard some, yeah. But as a contractor, you're kind of shielded from that. That's on the agency to kind of like work with and develop that relationship and manage that relationship. Whereas you kind of get to be the fun creative and do what, as long as you fulfill the brief, you can do that stuff. And I think what's important about agencies is, I kind of made that analogy of D&D before, but there's a lot of different titles and roles that are at agency side that maybe some of you all have worked with and some of you maybe haven't. And I think when I've worked with contractors in the past, the biggest thing and like learning curve for freelancers that I've worked with was that they didn't know how to work with the specific experts in the field. So what I've done is like I said, worked with this team for more than 10 years, and I've seen a lot of different personalities and skill sets. So I kind of wanted to break down a little bit of some of the players that you might see at an agency and kind of just some of the things that, how they work, what they tinker with. Because a lot of times they have the similar types of personalities that you kind of need to know what they're looking for from your work as a content creator or a freelancer or a photographer or videographer. So I'll start with our friends, the developers. My dear goodness. Developers are the guys that put the code and the pieces together on the back end of websites. They work to develop the software that powers your apps. They can develop the front facing of the UI, all that good stuff. Everything from e-commerce platforms to, login portals. These guys and gals and anything in between are very intricate. And with that, I put this slide together of like what they care about. Because the biggest thing that I saw was like freelancers didn't know how to work with these types of personalities or these types of professionals. So what they care most about are clearly labeled photos and videos that facilitate easy identification for landing pages or product pages. I've worked with a number of developers, and the amount of times I've seen them want to smash their face into their MacBook screens because a contractor would hand over a photo library and it's just like K851001, and they're like, I just need the fucking picture of this like product. Where is it? I'm sifting through 20,000 photos. So always make sure that, when you're working with a developer, please label your photos, because it is very true that they are very much codey people and they be sitting behind their desks all day, and that can make them a little bit grumpy. So try to make their lives easier there. Assets formatted with the correct size, aspect ratio, resolution, and file weight for optimal quality. Again, these guys and gals are working a mile a minute with lines of code. The last thing they want to do are resize your images. Please don't make them do that. Ask them at the upfront, like, what size do you need? What's the aspect ratio? If you're working on a website, what's the header image area? What's the ratio? Because that's the type of stuff that they're going to be looking for. Because at the end of the day, they don't know what the subject of the photo should look like. That's your job. They don't want to have to recrop something and then accidentally cut somebody's face off because they don't have that eye like we've got. And then meta descriptions are huge, especially in the day and age of ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act. Ensuring websites have meta descriptions for people using screen readers or other accessibility features are very important. And developers don't necessarily know what's in the photo, who it should be, how it should read. So when you send your photos over, even just attaching a simple sheet of the file name, what the photo's of, and the suggested meta description so they can just quickly copy and paste that in is hugely helpful, not only for them so that they're not having to figure out what you're talking about in the photo, but also for people that might not have the same level of accessibility or readability that you have. Designers, which I think probably most of you have a design background or some background in design, they establish the visual brand standards for logos, color palettes, typefaces, photo guidelines, and all the good stuff that catches our eyes when we work with brands. So when we work with designers in-house, when they work with our contractors of freelancers and photographers, they're really looking for photos and videos that authentically capture and convey the essence of a campaign. The number of times I've seen freelancers go off to the wind and capture photos that look visually appealing to them, but look very different from what the campaign looks like it's happened so many times. And that frustrates a lot of people because, number one, that usually involves a rescope and revisions that might not have been accounted for. So making sure that you stick to the creative brief and actually deliver photos that visually look like what the designer is expecting is hugely important. We also, again, I'm gonna probably say this every time, make sure that everything is properly sized and ratioed and all that good stuff. And then lastly, files delivered punctually and adhering to the established timeline. Everybody's moving and grooving and there's so many things, and one of the biggest pitfalls I've seen is that sometimes when we work with contractors, they'll meet the deadline, but it feels very rushed just because of pacing and time frame. And then, the designer gets in there and they're like, some of the stuff isn't edited right, the colors aren't the same, it's not consistent, it feels a little bit rushed. So when working with the designers, just make sure you work with a timeline that works with their timeline and you stick to it. Because you're only one piece of the cog in an agency, and once one piece falls out of place, the whole pipeline has to shift. So don't be the reason the pipeline shifts. We don't want that. That's not good. Copywriters, which this is Peggy from Mad Men, if you've ever seen that. Copywriters are the written expression of that brand. These are the folks that write the ad copy, the mission, vision statements, positioning language, all the stuff that actually works well with the images. The two are in harmony, and they really bring the brand's voice to life. So again, when working with copywriters, understand the desired look and tone that the creative should convey, because the writers need to write to those images and those videos and those assets. So if they, in the brief say that it should feel very warm and the copywriter is gonna be writing a lot of copy that's homey and touchy and feely, the slick, moody image probably isn't gonna fit the bill for that. So just stick to that and make sure that you're matching that up. Also make sure you have a clear view of the campaign and the shot list, knowing what the final images will be delivered. Because a lot of times I've worked with copywriters, and as a copywriter myself, like I'm waiting for those images to come in and I know what I'm probably gonna get. But if I have a shot list that's like, we're gonna have a close-up shot of this person, I can write copy according to that as opposed to guessing what types of images I may receive or may not receive. And then lastly, knowing which photo goes with which social media post. The amount of times I've seen posts go live with the wrong images because the copywriter didn't know what photo they were writing to and then the two don't match up. It happens a lot and it's very embarrassing for brands, and that's where then the agency gets in trouble. So just again, make sure that you are clear of what photo you want with what social media post. I was hoping Jess would be here because I was picturing she was gonna get a good head shake from that. PR specialist, that's me. So PR specialist, I think, has anybody worked with a PR agency before here? Okay, so just you guys. So this was my bread and butter where I got started, and we are hit or miss folks. Sometimes we're really fun and exciting, and other times we're really big sticklers that just want to use Microsoft Outlook and make everybody's life miserable. Does anybody use Microsoft Outlook here? Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. They can be really stiff, but really, like, these are the folks that put the brand's life in front of the people and connect the brand to the audiences most directly. A lot of times we're handling press events and getting coverage and pitching reporters and, for lack of a better word, slutting ourselves out to get the brand covered in the news. And that's pretty much what we do every single day. But a lot of times we work with photographers and videographers to make sure that we get accurate images of what we can pitch to the media. Everybody always says a story's or a picture's worth 1,000 words. We really embody that. And when we hire contractors specifically for these events, I know this made me cringe when I was getting into photography of same-day turnarounds, but when we're having an event, we really need a same-day image to send out to the media. Everything is timely and the news works on a 24-hour news cycle. So I know it's probably not gonna be your best work, but if they ask for, getting a photo the same day or a couple headshots of a ribbon cutting or, the executive director talking to somebody, even if it's not your greatest work, get that delivered to them and make sure it's lightweight, because all of these files are going over emails. Specifically, newsrooms have a ton of firewalls when it comes to getting inbound emails. So if anything is even over 1 megabyte, a lot of times the news stations will just kick it back and we won't get it. So just make sure that it's a lightweight file. And be ready to be okay with legally binding agreements, such as NDAs and all that good stuff. We've worked with a number of different photographers that have been on classified projects. One of the events I did was for the US Navy, and we had to have photographers that were brought in to capture classified stuff on a Navy sub and work with the media to get that all out. So they had to be okay with actually signing agreements that said you could never talk about this can't be in your portfolio, you quite literally were never here. So just know that that's okay, and nobody's gonna come and break your knees in the nighttime. It's just, you just gotta get used to that. And digital specialists. So these are kind of what I call jack of all trades these days. It used to be more granular back in the day, where these were specifically people that would place ads on digital platforms, but digital specialists have really kind of become an umbrella term for pretty much anybody that works in the digital space. This could be anybody that's a media buyer putting ads on the Google ad network or Facebook, anybody that works on the back end to optimize websites for SEO, keyword rankings, all that good stuff. Even things such as, like I said, just getting first page placements for specific keywords. And these guys are really focused on getting images that they can put up with their ads, ensuring that they're the right size, and staying up to date with what the right sizes are on social media. God bless any of you that do LinkedIn ads, because I swear to God, however many pictures and images are in the carousel, it changes the aspect ratio of them all. So keeping up with all of that stuff is super important to them, just so that when they get files and they open them up, they don't go rogue and are like, well, I'm just gonna screenshot this image and hope it's for the best because it's not the right size. They also like having access to media libraries, which I know might make some people feel a little bit uncomfortable, but when working with agencies, it's important to have an up-to-date library about just all the different types of things that people can pull from, just in case something might be awkwardly sized, having a different aspect ratio that the digital specialist can pull for and say, we need this size for the Meta Messenger ad, let's just pull this one down. And account executives, which these are probably gonna be the folks that you guys interface with the most. These are the ones that work as like brand managers or the primary client-facing representative for marketing agencies. They're the ones that are really on the front lines of managing the client's expectations and pitching new work and really kind of promoting you guys. So they also work with the creative teams collaboratively. It's a little bit of like a 2 teams, 1 body type of thing, where the creative team will work to develop the production work and the account executives will pass that over to the client to take in for any revisions, ask them how they feel about it, and then also try to like sell more work. So to these guys, the most important thing you can do is hit your deadlines. Please hit your deadlines, because when they don't get the deadlines met, they're the ones that have to go in front of the client and say, hey, we dropped the ball on this, here's what's going on. But also a clear understanding of what is and what isn't in scope. I've worked with a lot of contractors in the past that have had very weak contract documents or statements of work or scopes of work, and it wasn't clear what was a revision, what wasn't a revision, how many revisions there were. And that led to a lot of really tough conversations where people were, unsure of how they were gonna get paid or what they were getting paid for or what they weren't getting paid for. So, as you're setting up agreements and you're working on your own brand, make sure your contract documents are very clear and understandable to the people you're working with, just so that if something comes, back from a client and they ask you for more work, you can easily say, actually in this line, I'm only on deck for 1 round of edits to these photos. If you want to do more, we're happy to do it, but it's gonna cost more. And then be responsive, check your email, please, just once a day. That's all that accounts and agencies need, is just once a day email. You don't need to respond within 30 minutes, just once a day. So now your toolbox. So now that you kind of understand who the players are in the agency world, and I'm sure you're all just dying to work with agencies. It really is good, I promise. But, I think one of the things that I've seen, and Adam and I were actually talking about it earlier, is that, specifically in Buffalo and Rochester, there's a ton of creatives. There's a ton of agencies. I think Buffalo has one of the highest amount of ad agencies per square footage or something that we had a statistic of in the last couple of years that I saw. It was wild. I feel like every morning I open my inbox and I'm like, there's another agency in town. Where did you come from? Who are you? But when we're looking for talent, it's really interesting to see what gets submitted to us, because some portfolios and resumes and people are very polished and very good. And other people do really good work, but they don't do the greatest job of promoting themselves. The last Camera and Coffee talk, Mina gave great examples of why your personal brand matters. And this is a shining example of why it does, because we look at things and we only know what you tell us about yourself. So there's kind of really 6 things that we look for when we evaluate a contractor or a freelancer from an agency standpoint. Number 1, it's your website. That is the cornerstone of your brand. That is the first and most important thing that I'm gonna check when I'm looking at a contractor. What's on there? Do you have accurate work? Do you have a contact page? Does your site tell me what I need to know about you? Number 2, your portfolio. Is it diverse? Is it showing me the different types of shots and videos that you can produce? Is it diverse? Is there a good amount of diversity in your work? Because I don't want to hire somebody that only photographs one type of person. I need a breadth of experience for just all of the right reasons. But also, if you say that you are a landscape photographer and you have one landscape photo and a bunch of wedding stuff, that's gonna ring some alarm bells in my brain. Number 2 is invoicing. Make sure you have clear and easy to process invoices and where we can send payment to. I have gotten into some scuffles with freelancers where they couldn't send me an invoice and they said, well, can't you just pay me in an email? And I'm like, but where do I send the money? So just make sure you have a system that's up to date to process invoices and accept payment and send payment out promptly. And know what the terms are. If it's net 15 and you want to get paid in 15 days, if you're okay with net 30, just have all that stuff ready to go at the upfront. Delivery, so just know how you're gonna get photos and assets to the agency. A lot of times I've had people try to send me 100 photos in an email before, and if you've ever seen that before, it doesn't work. And then they're like, well, I sent them to you, and I'm like, no, you sent me an email. So just set it up. I mean, Dropbox is great, Google Drive is an amazing tool. Whatever your preference is, just have a system and a hierarchy for how you wanna deliver those files, and make sure that it doesn't run into any compression issues or anything like that. This one's most important, but file routing. Agencies have to go through a number of rounds of revisions when they get assets back. So when we get a file back from a photographer, if it's a video or if it is a photo, the whole team has to review it. So the account exec has to look at it, the creative director has to look at it, if there's an art designer, they have to look at it, and everybody's kind of got feedback on the piece. So there just needs to be a way to consolidate that, and you can understand and clearly say, okay, here's what's happening, here's who's saying what, here's the feedback I've got. how do we address this feedback and then make sure that all the changes were made. And then last is just filing. Make sure you know how to file your files. Keep them organized, neat and tidy. So if we come back to you and say, hey, we need that photo from this day on this date, just make sure it's not gonna be like a 3-week thing where we're like, oh crap, like where is that photo that I had 4 weeks ago from this one shoot? And then if you did want to get in the door with some agencies, here's a couple of tips I got for you. Number 1, research agencies and their work or case studies in your area. There's a ton of agencies in Rochester specifically, Buffalo also. Do your research, take a look at some of them and see some of the projects that they're working on. If you feel like you might jive with that, reach out to them. Don't go for like the top tier account executives or the presidents or any high ranking title. Reach out to the creative director or an art director and just ask for coffee. I felt like when I joined the agency world, that felt so foreign to me. I'm like, why would I want to reach out to ask basically somebody on a coffee date who I've never met in a professional setting? That feels weird. I don't want to do that. But then like people just do it. It's like a normal thing that happens and it's just so accepted and welcome. And they just look forward to it because even if they don't have projects right now, we keep all that stuff on file. And that way when we do get a new project, whether it's a small one or a big one, we're like, oh yeah, that was that person that we met. Like I remember their portfolio. Let's go through and dig them up and talk to them. And also network at industry events. They can be a little stiff, believe me. I've been to my fair share of really bad networking events where I'm like, one martini and I'm out. Like this is just gonna be a painful experience. But some of them are really great in Buffalo. Specifically the Buffalo's AAF chapter is one of the most active chapters in the country. They regularly win awards and there's a ton of great people there that you can meet and network with and just get a face to the names and also get a beat on like what projects people are working on. There's a ton of overlap with Rochester specifically, so it is a little bit of a drive, I know, but just going to one of those events could actually really pave the way to getting some great connections later down the road. Or cameras and coffee, even better. Okay, I know that was a lot and it was a little bit more dry, but let's chat. Got any questions? Anything on agency life? Yes.
If I was a freelance photographer
Yes.
and I'm like, I want to start getting into advertising commercial work,
Yes.
and I was cold emailing
Yes.
creative directors, what makes a photographer stand out?
I would say being unique because we get tons of emails every single day. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen people do all of the time is they go on the website and it's a little bit of like that college like job application syndrome where they go through the case studies and they copy and paste things carte blanche right off the website to try to like make themselves stand out. And I'm like, no, you kind of just creeped. But what I think is if you have something that like you very clearly state your value proposition of why you as a photographer stands out, and just honestly asking to get coffee is a standout enough because the amount of people that are just like, I do this, please, can I work with you? It's so repetitive and so redundant and it doesn't tell me anything about you, but almost think of it as like you're pitching yourself, like what is your type of work? Just very clearly, what do you specialize in? What do you wanna do? Let's get coffee and talk more about it if it aligns with it. Even sending like a couple of sample images, low res, like just some of your best work as attachments in the email, just so we can get a feel for you. Because again, it's almost like a mini resume and job application, even though it's not an open position. I think that's the easiest way to stand out because again, there's just so many things that we get inundated with of just cold emails of, hi, I've been doing this for 10 years, hire me because I do this. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you do. Tell me more. But yeah, that's what I would say about that.
I feel like, especially in Western New York, where there is more of a creative community than there is work for all of us. Mm-hmm. In my experience in Rochester, especially 10 years ago, agencies felt very kind of gatekeepy and cliquey. And do you have any advice for navigating that kind of environment?
Yeah, I do. It is very cliquey and it is very, very, very gatekeepy because a lot of times they want to protect their own and, you know, naturally they have hires that they have to make sure there's work for. I would say, in my experience, I've worked at a very small marketing agency my entire career. I was the 4th person there besides the 3 people that founded it. And I was shielded from a lot of that, but once I saw what the other landscape was, I was like, that is 100% not for me. But in my experience, working with the smaller boutique size agencies are easier to get into for work because they don't really have many full-time employees. They usually have a lot of contractors that they regularly work with. Whereas like the big ones, you know, they just go for the big fish and they know that they can get bigger budgets and they can kind of be a little bit more uppity with that stuff. But I would say, you know, once you meet with them, take a look at their website, get a feel for the people. Because I've seen, you know, agencies in Buffalo that they just personally felt very like intimidating when working with them, just based on their website. But once you actually get to meet them, they're very nice. And then I've seen other ones that are very cliquey. And there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of agency stuff, but I think if you do really good work and you stand by that work and you constantly deliver on time, you'll find the right agencies that are right for you. But yeah, I would steer clear of some of the bigger ones, especially like, you know, I'll use a Buffalo one, like Local Edge is very tough, where they have account executives that have 60 to 70 clients. And I've hired people that have worked with them and they've said, you know, we really only talk to our clients when there's an issue. Like, I don't know anything about their brand. The only time we look at their account is when their Google ad rankings tank. And like, that's the only time I touch that account. And I'm like, that's freaking terrifying. And they're paying you money, dear Jesus Christ. Ad agencies have a reputation and you're either an ad junkie or you're not, just because there's constantly moving parts. I mean, deadlines are moved up. I mean, there have been many nights where I've been at my office until 11:30 at night, getting right back up at 6 in the morning to do the damn thing. But it's very great and rewarding, especially because there's a constant stream of new work coming through where it doesn't feel like the same thing over and over and over again. Plus, you know, it can be cliquey, but when you find the right agency, everybody's usually pretty thick as thieves in there where, you know, it's a good culture, especially a lot of the newer, younger agencies that are coming up. You know, people don't want the old 9-to-5 life where you're stuck in a cubicle, like office space, ready to smash your face in. People want like something exciting and thrilling, and that's where I think a lot of these new agencies are starting to shine, like Hill and Valley. You know, so that's my advice on that. Just get a vibe check. Just read the room, see what it's like, check the about page, see what the bios say, all that stuff. If you see anybody that looks like, oh, they look like they actively pitch Microsoft Outlook, just run away from them. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
Okay, you've worn a lot of hats, obviously, from like where you started to where you are now. More recently, doing photography, which was at the beginning of your slide. How did you get into that, and what are you doing with it now?
Yeah. So when I started at the agency, and this is kind of where a lot of agencies, I think the phrase is like building the plane while they're flying it. I don't know, it's something like that. But you know, a lot of times they'll pitch client work, and you know, I would say a good amount of times there isn't a full suite of people in the agency to do that work. They have most of it, but they need that one missing piece. And that's where a lot of times we look for contractors who are videographers, photographers, creatives to fill those gaps. I've been lucky enough that my company has trained me to do some of those things where just naturally, instead of hiring a contractor, they were like, if you want to learn it, we'll teach it to you, or we'll try and we'll give you the tools to do it. But I think that's the benefit of an agency is you kind of can learn and broaden your skill set by working with them because they have the people and those experts that are so willing to teach you on the job. As far as photography goes, doing a lot more of it now, thanks to Mina and Hill and Valley for pushing me into getting into that space again. I missed it a lot, and you know, I think it's really interesting to see where that's taken. I mean, I've basically brought that offering now to the agency more than it ever was. We dabbled in it a little bit, but you know, now we're just looking to really kind of grow that, and I'm looking to grow it every single day. Yeah, so a lot of times when agencies would hire out photographers, especially more professional ones, they would be very stiff, very like uncomfy, and they make clients feel uncomfy. And like when you're working with an agency, you are basically representing that agency. So my approach was, I'm just gonna be me. My quirky, goofy, nerdy self. Like if you didn't notice, the font in this presentation is the original IBM font from way back in the 90s. That is how dorky I am. And you know, I just bring that approach to all of my clients. And you know, it's a restaurant client, it's Southern Junction. They're a Texas barbecue joint in Buffalo, New York that the owner's from Carrara. I don't want to mispronounce it. He's from India, and he fused Indian cuisine with Texas barbecue. It's super good, highly recommend them. They're amazing. Like he was a James Beard nominee. He didn't win this year, unfortunately, but he's a big deal. But doing a lot of food photography with him and just really kind of keeping up and making him feel like he's getting a bang for his buck, because a lot of times, you know, agencies are all about value. They want to give you more than what an employee would bring. So, you know, instead of saying you're only gonna get 25 shots, I'm like, I will edit 100 selects for you. And I have a whole backlog library that I will not charge you for if you want me to retouch and edit one more of them. And that's really kind of what won him over, is he was like, you know, I've worked with photographers in the past and they were so stiff. Anytime I went outside of that, like 20 shots that I wanted, they wanted like another $100. He was like, I'd rather just, you know, work with you because you're able to give me that same quality product, but also I don't feel like I'm getting nickel and dimed. And it's just all about bringing value, you know, bringing value to the agency, bringing value to the agency's clients and all that stuff.
And you mentioned that, like, you know, the photographers that you would hire are kind of a representation of your team, even if maybe it's the first time you've worked with them or you don't work with them often. What are some of like the professional like qualities or like soft skills, so to speak, that you really look for in your contractors that kind of wow you or make you think like, oh, I'm gonna keep hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is responsive communication. A lot of times, you know, even in my own freelance work, you know, I would let emails slide for a couple of days and it would just turn into a couple more days. And I think agencies really do want just timely responses. They're looking for that up-to-date communication of almost over communication of where the project is at, you know, how are things tracking, just even like the check-ins of midway through, even if the photos aren't due for another 2 weeks, just saying, hey, popping in to let you guys know everything's tracking well, I don't have any questions. Is there anything you need from me? Just maintaining that open line of communication really stands out and really helps agencies get a really strong feel for who you are as a professional. And I think another one is honestly being professional, but not overly professional. You know, at the end of the day, we're creatives, we're kind of the cool employees, we get the fun ones. We get to work with the brands, we get to take the photos, we get to make things look slick and cool. And I think sometimes when you get contractors that are so stiff and like in the suits all the time and like just being like, this is this and this is that, it doesn't let your personality shine, and that's really what we're hiring. We're hiring your work, of course, but like we want to hire the person that did the work too. So don't feel like you have to be so overly professional. I mean, obviously maintain like enough of a professional stance where you're not going to scare somebody away, but don't let that thought of like, well, this is like a professional marketing agency dim your light. Let it shine, be you, as corny as that sounds, I guess. And then lastly is just over-delivering and under-promising. It's such a small little trick that anybody can do where if you know these photos are gonna take you 5 days to edit, tell them they'll have them in 10 days and then deliver them on that 5th day. You will look like such a damn rock star and they will be like, this person is so fast and they have never once burned me on a damn deadline. I want to hire them for everything. As opposed to the opposite where you know it's gonna take 10 days and you feel like you just need to say 5 days because that's what they want you to say. And then you burn them and then they're like, all right, well, this person sucks. Like, I'm never hiring them again. The over deliver, under promise is such a small skill that is so good.
In regards to the invoicing, is there a preferred system that agencies look for?
I personally have used QuickBooks in the past, but I think it depends on the number of volume of invoices you're sending. That might be too monstrous of a beast if you're not sending out regular invoices. I really have had good luck with PayPal. PayPal invoicing is amazing. I've never run into an issue with, see, PayPal, shout out, yes, good. It makes it super easy at the end of the year for tax keeping purposes. And it's really intuitive. Like you just log in, you just make a business account. You can like customize the invoice of like the terms, you can add conditions to it. It even does things like if you are selling a good or a service, you can put how many hours the thing is. So you can say like my agent's or my rate is $100 an hour or $50 an hour. You just pop in how many hours you got and it does it all for you. So I really enjoy Pass Gallery. I'll put a link to it. If you actually click the QR code, my TwitchCon library, I did a shoot for TwitchCon. I used Pass Gallery for that. I think it should still be up. I think I did have an issue with my bank where I changed banks, so like the link might not be active anymore because like they didn't process the payment, but it's super good. You upload images right to it. It keeps the fidelity of the images and it does it all in the background. And what's even nicer is you can set permissions on galleries so that if you want some photos to be able to be seen and free, but you want somebody to pay for the whole gallery, or if you want to do any of that other stuff, it's very easy to use. Yeah, I really enjoy it because I was struggling with finding like a nice gallery option or like a nice image software that was easy and not scary, but also not gonna like make me need to sell my kidney or like go to like feet pictures because they're so expensive. It's the truth, some of them out there in this economy, man, I'm telling you, that shit's expensive. But Pass Gallery is pretty affordable, so I would recommend that.
Doing contract work, I wanted to hear what your thoughts are on like doing full-time agency stuff as well and what that's like. It's a good beast, but you gotta be ready for it. So full-time at an agency, depending on the agency, is very fast-paced and very fun and exciting. A lot of the agencies pride themselves on being like cool and slick and counter office culture is what I like to call it. But I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, especially for an agency that manages a lot of projects and a lot of clients. No 2 days are ever the same, and there's a lot of like project juggling. So some days, like, you know, Mina and I would be like, we thought we had a clear understanding of what our day would look like, but midway through it's changing gears, and you know, the project manager is like, actually the client needs this 2 days earlier. So we need to like shift gears and not prioritize this project, but shift over to this project. You know, it is tough. It does burn a lot of people out that aren't really ready for that kind of hustle lifestyle, but it does have a lot of rewards too, where you're able to meet a lot of people, work with a lot of really cool brands. And, you know, as somebody who really likes, you know, being fulfilled, like mentally and learning new things, and also having like a broad base of like what I do as a living, it's great for that. Because you just naturally like pick up skill sets from other people. Like, I literally knew nothing about design when I started at my agency. I knew nothing. I was like, I mean, these fonts look fine, I guess, like Comic Sans, LOL. But now I'm like, no, like that kerning is jacked up, like it looks, no, like that's not proper. So like, you just kind of absorb other skill sets, so you're able to kind of broaden what you know as a professional. But yeah, it can be tough and tricky, especially when clients are tough and tricky, because you're in the people business. You know, you gotta make clients happy, you gotta work with them, and you gotta make sure that they feel good and they feel heard. So I think the hardest part of it is definitely the people, but you know, if you like doing a different thing every single day and you wanna learn new skills, I would definitely explore it. Thank you all. Thank you. And thank you again for Hill and Valley for letting me do this and supporting Cameras and Coffee. So, you know, thank you guys, it means a lot.